name is Fred Cook, and I drive school bus.
My name is Leanne Murchie, and I'm a school bus driver for TCAPS. It's been a very wonderful experience.
When I first hired in, one of the previous bus drivers told me that this particular job, driving school bus, is the best job on earth. So I immediately took to it, and I have to agree that this is one of the best jobs that anyone can do.
What prompted me in the very beginning, I have a college degree, and she said, "You're in the safest vehicle in the world on the road." So I thought, well, I'm gonna try. Because I would be on the same time schedule as my own children. And when they were off, I was off. When holidays, I was there. So it was the best of both worlds. TCAPS offers jobs elsewhere within the system.
Between routes, I used to, for 12, 13 years, I did lunch duty over at East Middle School, and now I paint.
They're real good about finding people the hours that they need.
I would like to call the board curriculum meeting to order. We'd like to welcome the audience and thank you for attending. Viewers may watch the Board of Education meetings and board committee meetings live on TV 190 or online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. So just quickly before we move into public comment, I thought we could go around and just introduce ourselves really quickly. We have a guest, and so just so everyone knows who is here today.
Sure. I'm Megan Feast. I'm the board recording secretary.
Tiffany Palmaville, the Executive Director of Special Education.
Kristen Perkowski, Associate Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction.
Flanoy Humphreys, Vice President of the School Board.
Erica Moon-Moore, Curriculum Chair.
Beth Pack, Simple Trustee.
And I'm Kirsten Jones-Morgan. I'm the Executive Director of Student Achievement.
I'm Misty Warner. I am the Director of Whole Child Systems.
Heidi Maltby-Skodak, Executive Director of School Improvement Innovative Programs.
So thank you. Okay, so we've set aside, we'll move right into public comment. We've set aside the time for public comment. There's obviously nobody here today, so we will go ahead and move right on. Our first agenda item is procedural items. So we are at the draft meeting minutes. Are there any changes to the meeting minutes?
None for me.
Okay, so in the hearing, no changes, they will remain as posted. Next item is the 23-24 TCAPS District Course Catalog. Heidi?
There are no updates at this time.
There are no updates. We got a lot of updates last time, and so we'll go into our informational items. So first item is the board curriculum learning series. So MSTEP, PSAT, and SAT. So Miss Heidi Skodak.
Yeah, so today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about, you'll hear quite a bit about NWA and MAP assessment, which stands for Measurement of Academic Progress. And it's really a nationally normed assessment that allows us to compare our students to other students across the nation. And it's also computer adaptive. So it allows students to progress and allows us to see their growth authentically when they take the assessment 3 times a year. So they take it in the fall, winter, and the spring. The what behind the assessment, and that's a part of the learning series, is NWA is a normed reference assessment designed to gauge students' progress relative to other students from across the nation. And we use this in a couple different ways. We use it to help inform our information on even putting in intervention groups together. It could be used to monitor and build grade and class instructional goals throughout the year. It could be to develop grade level SMART goals. So NWA is used in multiple different ways to help support student growth. The how is what I touched on earlier. It's given in the fall, this winter, and the spring, 3 times a year. It allows teachers to look at student growth at the midpoint during the year and make adjustments. That's not something state tests allow us to do, right? State tests are always in the spring. We have the opportunity to do, and you'll hear a little bit more about this later, but PSAT in the fall and the spring, but nothing in the winter for that midpoint check for benchmarking to see how our students are doing. and then being able to make adjustments from there, unless it's a local assessment. Local assessments, we can use that too. So I put a few extra slides in here just to give you an overview of that MAP growth and what it was designed to do. It's a little background information that really talks about how it delivers information to the teacher, the student, and the parents about academic growth over time. And that's really what we're talking about. The great thing about NWA is, you know, our goal is to see students grow more than a year's growth, and that allows us to see if that actually happened. Because how are we going to make instructional moves and be able to see that improvement show up on our M-STEP scores, right? Only way is to get more than a year's growth out of that. So it measures really what students know regardless of their grade level. And it's adaptive. So it shows and measures growth over time, allowing students to see their growth throughout a school year and parents to see their growth. It is computer adaptive. So as a student answers questions correctly, it will really push that level up as the student's taking the assessment and allow us to get a really good gauge specifically about where their next learning targets could be.
That's amazing.
I mean, it is. It really is. It's adaptive. And what's interesting is a lot of our programs that for support, like intervention programs, have that adaptive tool in them built in now. So really, it goes back to artificial intelligence, that AI. How are we able to use that to our benefit to help more specifically engage in what our students' next learning objective might be? And what is the RIT score? This is usually a question that comes up because that comes to us on the MAP growth test. And it really is a score that reflects the academic knowledge, skill, and abilities at the current moment. So when did the student took the test? One thing to note about NWA and MAP growth is that it's normed based on weeks. So whenever we're entering information into the system and students are taking that test, we enter the specific weeks that those tests are taken. So it has to do with the amount of learning that has taken place and the number of weeks in the school year. So very interesting. So that's a little bit different about NWA. That doesn't happen with all students or with all assessment tools. So it really gives parents a pretty good gauge on how their students are doing and if they are growing, which is super important. I gave some examples here. A lot of people ask, you know, what does it actually look like on the tester side, you know, for students? So you're able to see, I gave 2 examples, a 3rd grade reading and a 3rd grade math, just to look at kind of what the questions look like. And these are all done on the computer now. Nothing is paper pencil unless it's required by a student's IEP. And that gives you an example of what those MAP growth practice test or assessment questions might look like. There's multiple reports. The one I highlighted today is called a family report, and it really gives a good description of that MAP growth. Talks about student achievement and where they are compared to the national average, which is good for us all to know, and student growth compared to what that projection is on the milestones. On the right-hand side, you'll see a parent next step support page that gives them links to any information they want to know about NWA and opportunities to support through really how it can link. This is a new thing that NWA has this year. It's actually linking to Khan Academy and to some other programs. So that's one interesting feature of NWA that PSAT, SAT has already done, and now NWA is doing it as well. NWA was recently purchased by HMH, and HMH is one of our curriculum companies that we do a lot of work with, and Waggle soon, not quite yet, we haven't figured out the nuances of that yet. It will be able to be used in collaboration with NWA. So good information there about NWA.
Is that family report emailed to them or mailed to them?
They get a hard copy. So in the fall and in the winter and in the spring. So they get hard copies sent to their house in their backpack, and a copy goes in their CA60. So they have that year after year data. And on the report, the full report actually shows, I think, up to 5 years of data and growth on there. So they're excellent reports to see kind of where they're going, where they're headed, and where they are nationally normed with other students across the nation, which is huge, right? If you look at, they talk about educational rank of Michigan, right? This allows us to actually see where our students are doing nationally and really helps us reflect on how we are doing, not only just as a district and as a state, but that nationally normed assessment. So we continue to use NWA as a tool for that progress monitoring benchmarking piece. We also have some other tools that you heard about last time. Tiffany talked a little bit about that STAR assessment that they're using and piloting with the special education students. So you'll hear more about opportunities as tests and assessments evolve over time. So we're in an interesting time right now with AI. So expect to see changes coming more quickly than before to their ability to adapt based on student input. Now I'm going to move on to state assessments, so our spring report of state assessments. And later on, I'll give you, I'm going to go over the overarching assessment pieces, but you're going to get a data assessment. This was one of the requests.
Let's pass it out to him now so they
Okay.
have it.
This was one of the requests that came last year, or maybe, was it fall? I don't know when, but, so we're really trying to do a better job of getting you information. Not only, you'll see NWA in there, you'll see PSAT, you'll see SAT. We need more, are we good? Yes?
Good for right now.
Okay. So that will give you a deeper dive into the data. And now know for us, when you look at this book, we actually go even deeper than what you'll see in this book. So when we start to think about placing a student in an intervention, this is just the surface information. We actually dig much deeper into like what makes the most sense. So we're gonna look at, the state testing data that came back, and we're gonna talk about it in a couple different ways. We're gonna talk about it as it exists for us and what our, how we did as a district. And then we're also gonna look at how we did compared to peer districts as well as with our region. So this is the first glance of our this is the MSTEP data for grades 3 through 8. Blue line is ELA, green line is math, yellow line is science, and red is social studies. So in the past few years, we've had significant gains you see in science. And again, we had pretty good success last year. Some of the things that I believe that contributes to that is 2 years ago, we adopted those FOSS science kits, and teachers used to have to share. Every teacher has their own science kit now, which is a complete change. The other thing we did was we really dug down and looked at critical content for science and what makes the most sense for us to make sure we're hitting the hardest in those elementary, really through 8th grade years. And so we redid the mapping for science, and we also looked at pacing approach as well as the teacher resources and how are we linking them to that critical content. So I suspect that that implementation of every teacher having the resources for science instruction had some impact on that as well. We also, yeah.
I'm sorry, even during a pandemic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But, you know, one of the things I think about in science is when we were virtual, at least this is just a hypothesis for me, but when we were virtual, we were thinking about ways to get students to do some things outside, not just staring at the computer, some hands-on investigation. We heard a lot about like the design process and project-based learning and how they can do things at home. So very interesting. Happy for sure on the results. Hope to see it continue. We saw growth in social studies as well, and hair in math. So we were happy to see our scores for MSTEP for 3rd through 8th grade students. This is our 11th and 12th grade. Remember, this is only for science and social studies. The rest you'll see on the PSAT. So we saw increase in science slightly and a pretty good increase in social studies as well after a significant decline. So headed in the right direction there. And I believe in 2021, I have to go back and look. I was going to do this and simply slipped my mind. I think there might have been some norming going on with the test in 2021. So I will find out and get that answer back to you on that as well. This next slide is our regional data. So this is how we compare to Northwest Educational Services. That 0% line is where that average is for schools within our region. And this is where TCAPS is scoring according to the average of Northwest Educational Services. So in 2012, we were below average, and then in 2015, it was significantly above the average, and then have continued to stay above the average, and we sit at 7.2% above that average in our region today. So that's good news, and we always like to see that trend going up. We're pushing further away from where that 0% is. That's good for us.
What happened in 2012? Because there's another chart there where we tanked a little bit in 2012.
I am not sure. I was not here in 2012.
Financially, I can tell you.
Well, I know, that's what I'm thinking was
So you had
the-
less teachers, you had a lot less, so possibly. Only thing I can, kind of, the
Yeah.
only thing that comes right to mind of major.
I thought the same thing, but
We all remember those cuts, right? It's like, so, headed in the right direction again. I'm interested that, we see this go up, down, up, down, up, down. So how do we continue on the upward trend we would be geniuses if we are able to figure that out. So we have some ideas about where to go to next, but this is our first, look at just that data.
That zero line,
Mm-hmm.
overall, on your whole, from 0 to 100, where does that zero line fall over the range of information a kid could master? Does that make sense?
I don't think say it one more time.
So if you have, on a test, you're scoring of the possible best you can do and the worst you can do, and you were going from 0 to 100,
Yeah.
right? The zero line on this is where on that range?
Oh, I would have to go back and look. You
What's
want to
the
know the
base you want?
percentage of,
Yeah, thank you.
zero.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
percentage of what that is. I would have to go back and look.
Okay,
can do that for you.
Just kind
Yep.
of curious what that actually
Yeah, what does
translates.
7.2%
Base
above
average
mean?
of what
Yeah.
making the line.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes sense. So, next slide, this is, regional data, again, in our scores with SAT. So you'll see, and this has state, and this is with our peers. And this is not regional data. I apologize for saying regional data. This is state data on there. So, the bottom line is all LEAs in the state of Michigan. The green line are our peers, and you're gonna see more of that, on the next slide. So peers meaning size of school, like socioeconomic status for our students, so very similar in demographics. And then the top is, the blue line is TCAP. So where you see the state slightly went down, you see our peers slightly went down, you see that we trended up, which, that's always good news for us when we see that we were able to be on that upward trend.
The yellow line, LEAs and PSAs, what does that stand for again? I think,
Local edu-
education agencies and public school academies, charters.
okay,
So everybody,
okay.
yep,
So that's everybody, including us,
yep. The green line are
in that
schools
Yeah,
that are
yeah,
like
those-
us.
Every school in the
Yeah.
state,
every school.
and then
got it.
green is
But-
schools such as Portage, you'll see in there,
Okay.
the comparables,
Yeah,
and then the top is us.
So,
okay.
yeah, so that's like your whole Detroit system as well, yeah.
In the bottom you're talking,
Yes,
is every
yeah.
student in the state, yep.
And the total amount of points is 1,600, correct?
Yes, yep,
So we're kind of a little above halfway on the knowledge base.
and then this is PSAT, so where our proficiency is for ELA and math. These are just our proficiency scores. The interesting thing comes here, so you'll see 9 schools listed here, and you'll see that ours is highlighted as third in line. And so when I was selecting schools to look at comparables, we, like I said, selected size of school, socioeconomic status, and then we look at kind of our comparables where we compare to them. The far right, the dark green is that advanced proficiency, the light green is proficient, the light red is partially proficient, and the dark red is not proficient at all. And so when you see those bands on the right-hand side, you'll see how many students really are falling in those areas. And out of the schools that we consider our peers, we are ranked at about third based on number of students that are proficient or advanced. And so getting closer to Midland Public Schools usually scores very high, and so does Portage. So working our way up as it relates to that M-STEP proficiency grades 3 through 8. again, that yellow line, again, all schools, state of Michigan. Green are our peer districts, and then we are just outperforming them, Traverse City Area Public Schools.
The interesting thing about Grand Blanc, I think, is that because school of choice, a lot of the inner city Flint kids are going into the Grand Blanc. So you're getting an interesting change in your demographics within your school system.
Yes, for sure.
So
Yep.
it makes it really hard to,
Compare.
exactly.
It is, yep. So in
It's
fact, you'll
interesting.
see, it is very interesting because you'll see, I think I have selected some different schools this year based on that, because I try to get the ones that are closest to us, what looks like
So
makeup
your
of us.
So you'll hear me talking a lot about talking with the people at Midland and Portage, and different things we're doing, because, I mean, they both have two Class A high schools. I mean, in so many ways, they're very, very similar.
Nothing on the west side of the state.
Not really. I mean, Zeeland would be the closest next one. on the
West
side of
West
the state.
Ottawa, but they don't tend to perform as well.
But they
as
only
we
have
do.
one high school. They're large one high school, where Zeeland would be the next one down, has two. So L'Anse Cruz has two high schools. Huron Valley does, Farmington does, we do, Portage and Midland do. So they're very, very similar in that way, where West Ottawa, for instance, is a large, and Howell are large high schools, and Grand Blanc as well. Grand Blanc's over 2,000 students, I believe.
So a place like Washtenaw County
Mhm.
with the Ann Arbor schools, or the East Lansing,
Yeah.
East Lansing more so.
Again, all one school, they're smaller.
Okay.
They're only about 4,000 or 5,000 students
Okay.
overall. So that's kind of this weird enigma of large districts.
Ann Arbor's almost a mega school, Plymouth Canton's a mega school.
Yeah, same way.
I know,
Yeah.
Ann Arbor's
Yeah,
different.
those are the closest from that. Zeeland would be the closest west side one, Beth.
Okay.
That we would have, there are about 6,000 students with Zeeland East and Zeeland West.
And I think their free and reduced lunch rate was.
Much higher.
Yes.
Or much lower, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Socioeconomically,
exactly.
they'd be much
Yep.
higher.
Yep, so, I think that's why they were excluded when I was selecting.
Because not only do you take similar size, similar setup, but you also take into consideration free and reduced.
Yes.
You
All
take-
the demographic
All the
assessments,
demographic,
correct.
yes.
Demographics.
That's what finds it so interesting when they change, when you see that your cohorts change, because they did fluctuate a little bit. I think my first year, we would compare to Walled Lake, and we're not even in the same, realm of them anymore. But it really helps us to see, and when you look at the graph there, you look at that, where Traverse City was and where our peers were, I feel like we have done a good job, even during COVID, staying at least on pace and headed in the right direction. Now, what's interesting is when you see the same lines, like you see, yep, everybody went up, everybody went down, almost exactly the same. It's very interesting to see about how students are performing on those tests, so,
Which does make me, as I've told you
Yeah.
before, question the state test a little bit. Like, how is it that everybody's
One
trend line
trend's the
is
same way.
exactly the same?
and I would say from wearing my science hat, that they're, in the state of Michigan, they don't tell you when you teach your science by year. So it makes it very difficult to actually perform well on tests, because you're not really sure where your target is sometimes. So like, you have to really focus on those core fundamentals, simply because it's not sequential, it's not like math. so.
Where inversely, we do the SAT, the PSAT, the national, the College Board.
Yeah.
And I saw something interesting the other day. Jesse was showing me the new reports out from SAT.
Yeah.
They now do item analysis like we way back did
Yeah.
with the M-STEP. You actually get to see the questions that you didn't answer well.
Good.
In our
'Cause
state
some
test,
are
we do not
need to
get
be
that.
thrown out.
Right, our state test, we do not get that. So all of the College Board ones we actually get. So you see if kids didn't do well, you actually get to read the question and talk about what do we need to teach better next year.
Or how do they need to rephrase that question?
Correct. And so that's what we love about the College Board suite of PSAT 8, PSAT, SAT. We have national comparisons, we have item analysis, we have all those things that we don't have with the M-STEP.
Yeah, the other thing interesting about that is, I was going through it because they have their first PLC tomorrow and it's data focused. So I was pulling, some of that data for the PSAT and SAT just to review it. And it's so interesting because I always look at the strategy of like, okay, let's look at those easy questions. What were the easy questions that the students missed? That's low hanging fruit. Like if you look at, if it's in the same category of questioning or things students are getting wrong, that's an easy fix, right? So they allow you to actually sort by easy, medium, difficult. And it gives you the percentages of students that are close versus like, you know, they tells you exactly where they answered the question A, B, C, D, and why they may have picked that other answer.
What their choosing
Yes.
leanings
Choosing
were.
instead, right?
So very interesting. Does give some feedback to the PSAT and SAT on those science and social studies, but they're embedded more in that language, you know, acquisition, being able to understand the science questions that are embedded in there. So, for sure, I love the PSAT, SAT. NWEA, again, you can look to see how to improve with students and you get feedback right away. Very different than the state test. It's like a one and done autopsy, which is why we're here in the fall, talking about state data. So,
It would be interesting to encourage MASB to do a course or two on testing, you know, and how to look at it and where to query it, you know, so that you can actually start looking at your kids' curriculums realistically and maybe even tweak some assists, you know, to make them stronger for some kids.
yeah, you'll see in your,
We're a long ways from that.
you'll see in the book too, we also give an overview of like what the assessment plans look like by grade level. So like where are those local assessments given, where are the state, and then where are those nationally normed tests? So in there, it's by grade level. So that helps us pace out kind of where those opportunities are for assessment feedback. Now, there's more that occurs, right? It could be formative feedback that you have during class time, but at least it gives us a pacing guide of what our students will experience as far as assessments go. This next graph is your 11th and 12th grade students. And you'll see that, again, we had a pretty significant decline up until last year, and we seem to be pulling out of it this year. So green again is our peers. We are at par with our peers, and we were not for the past, in our downward trend the last few years. So still scoring above our peers, but really took a dramatic decrease. And when you look at where our lineup is on proficient and advanced proficiency, that's interesting to me because when you look at the not proficient, those can be our bubble kids, right? They might have been this close, one question close to being proficient, but you don't actually see that on there. So when I see a wide light red band, I wonder how many of those students, and we look at that, are on the bubble and how we can make strategic moves through interventions or tier 1 instruction to get them to that other side.
I have a weird question. Do you ever give kids an opportunity to talk about that test and some of those questions to kind of see what they're thinking?
Yeah, they do at the high school, at least in my experience when I was in high school. We would do the item analysis breakdown with the teachers, so by department.
Yeah.
And then from there, they would go back and look at those instructional strategies and have conversations with students.
I'm just trying to think at the elementary level, though, you don't get that option to see the questions, do
You
you,
do
as
not.
the teacher and the?
You do not.
You don't.
You don't?
You don't on M-STEP.
Right.
You get trends, and you can go back and look at their examples, which we have done. So you can look at previous years, and they have a bank of questions that you can pull.
So the kids would literally have to remember what it all
Yeah, a
said
little
and try and
bit,
do, it just
Say,
doesn't
oh,
work.
that kind of area
That's what's
just didn't make
different
any
about
sense.
the SAT, I was saying, we actually will get the question to be able to go,
Yeah.
oh, this is what it said, and then they sit and talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't get that in the state elementary test.
Yeah.
You can do some previewing. You can get online and do some previewing, which most buildings would do, so they
But
would
are
get.
sample questions,
But they're
not
just
the
samples,
questions,
yeah.
yeah.
So here's something you might see on a test, it might look something similar to this, and then you can work through it, but it's not exact.
But then again, yeah, if you tunnel vision them all down one type of way the question is phrased.
And it's
it
phrased
doesn't-
differently.
Yeah, or
Which-
it doesn't mean that
Which
they
I
can
personally
really-
believe there's a ton of variance, personally, but
You're
I couldn't
probably
tell you because I
right.
don't get to see.
But you're probably right, I bet you are, yep.
And the conversations too about, you're able to see by teacher. Like you have some teachers you can spot, I'm like, oh my God, she's nailing that concept really well. Her kids are getting it on the
Yes.
PSAT or SAT. And those great conversations occur in that learning together. One of my favorite things to do is just that item analysis breakdown and looking at that. Because the learning for the teachers translates immediately to how are they gonna make corrections in their teaching or adjustments to it.
Yeah,
So,
and how well they understand the whole principle
yeah.
that they're trying to teach.
And then there's the chicken and the egg. Are you teaching to the test? Are you not?
Right.
What is good for kids to know? So there's that whole other conversation out there, right? So this is really showing our 11th and 12th grade, and we rebounded this year after 2 years of decline. So we're happy to see that growth.
Can I ask you a quick
Yeah.
question? I think it's a typo, but on, so this is ninth.
Yeah, this isn't the same as what you're seeing up there, probably.
Okay, well,
That
on
has more.
if I look at the state peer group, MEP and M-STEP 3 through 8, and then state peer group, MEP, M-STEP 3 through 8, TCAPS was ranked kind of third, and then on this one, they're ranked 5th? What's the
Well,
difference
one is
between
11th
these
and
two?
12th grade, and the other is,
Okay, so maybe it's
So we
just a
still
type-
take a
I
little
think
bit
it's
of
a
state
typo.
test. No. We still take a little bit of state test at the grades and then besides the SAT.
so
Only
they
in
take
what?
social studies and science
Only.
at
Okay.
11th and
M-STEP.
12th grade.
So you're
Okay.
seeing elementary and the other one you're seeing is high school.
Okay, so I think it's a typo in the book, just
Okay.
Could
well,
be.
just so you know.
Holler afterwards and I'll-
And you said 9th through 12, or 9th through 11.
11th and
11th and
11th
12th grade
12th,
only.
and 3 through 8.
Oh, okay, got it.
Sure,
Okay.
after the good news is you're the first one to have a copy, so.
Yes.
Hey, and I'm not calling you out here. I was like, wait, I'm missing, what is the difference?
And
So-
when I say hot off the press, I mean hot off the
Yeah.
press.
Perfect. Okay, all good. I got it. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then this is again state peer group for SAT, not PSAT. And again, everybody else was trended down, we are trended up. The other thing you used to hear a lot in TCAPS was that we are a low-cost, high-performing school district. The data on the right actually tells us how much we were spending on instructional cost and then the performance of the schools. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
So, so it just depends. Now, this is 2022, right? So I would say with our influx of ESSER dollars, you'd see that change significantly because we were able to advance some of our investments in curriculum. But,
Wow.
interesting data. What?
Yeah, you'd want to
They
think
all got
about that
ESSER
one a little
dollars,
bit.
right?
So federal dollars all in, that's what we look like compared to Farmington, for instance.
And also think too, because we've had quite a few conversations about this in ET, about those ESSER dollars are going away. And it's really, some schools are spending them on people, and then all of a sudden they're gonna have to say, there's no money, now we're gonna have to do cuts, you know? We thought about I think we were very strategic in how we thought about what resources can we use to support staff in ways that are sustainable versus one and done. So I think that some of that, what you're seeing on there is investment in people that now after next year, because this will be the last year, those will go away.
It'll be interesting how that changes, so remember, you take all those, and there's not a district there that I can think of that's half of our size for transportation, for instance. So we're spending money that they're using for instructional dollars on busing kids,
Right.
you know, and all those other
We're doing
elements.
more.
More with less, basically.
More with us, yeah.
More with less, for sure. When do we see the money, right?
So, but it'll see if it averages out, you know, based on what they're trying to do. It'll be interesting to see as we move forward with that, if we're gaining in the financial gap.
It's too bad. Do we ever use that data to go after other things? Or we'll probably say to the other districts, look what TCAPS is doing.
I mean, to an extent, for instance, like 3.1 mils is all we levy. If you look at their mill rates, they're probably 7, 8 on facilities.
They
You
are
know, all those
huge.
kind of things. So that's one thing right now, as we're showing, is we're one of the lowest mill rates for facilities in the region.
have been forever, haven't we, John?
Quite a while.
Yeah. So this one is, again, these are the PSAT scores. So these are 8th, 9th, 10th grade students. Third with our peer group here. So doing okay, but had just a slight decline this year. But last year we had a significant increase. So feeling good that we are now, if you notice in 2021, we were below our peering group and now we are above. So that again is some good news for TCAPS. The next slides are here just for you to see kind of what percentage of students in 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th either met in both E or W, which is the ELA portion, and in math, or met one or the other. And I also put on here on the far right-hand side, I put the state. So you can see like EMS, you know, what their percentage was for met both, met in ELA and met in math, and then you see the state was sitting at 33%, 60%, 38%. So in all of those buildings, we exceeded again what the state is at.
And to make sure you know, Mo is Montessori.
Yep. MO is Montessori. Montessori
Not Missouri.
had amazing scores.
Not Missouri.
That was it.
So Montessori had amazing scores. They have the past few years. And in their new, I'm just excited to see what continues to happen, so. Super celebrated for their scores too. This is 9th grade look. Central, West, TCAPS, and then state. And 10th grade. Overall, I feel good about how we perform as a district, but that doesn't tell me we can't get better, right?
Right.
Relentless pursuit to get better for our kids. And so in the book, I'll have to take a look at yours afterwards. So in the book, you'll see a lot more information. If you go to section 4, you'll see the state M-STEP data as well as the percentage scores. Some highlights that I would say 3rd grade had some struggles at the elementary. 4th grade had some notable growth at Cortade and Long Lake. And then 5th grade overall had a downward trend for our students in 5th grade. So some things to think about and work for us to do. This really isn't aligned with what's coming next when we talk about shoring up our multi-tiered system of support for our students. Our next level of work in the district is, and we have some of that work done, but we're really looking at where our gaps are and how to have an excellent multi-tiered systems of support in place for all our students, each and every student, as it relates to the strategic plan. So, the data look pretty good to me. Always room for improvement, but for a district our size, where we're located, because a lot of the schools, you know, those are urban schools. They aren't even rural. So it's very interesting to see how we compare, because they have a lot more resources available to them that aren't even necessarily a part of their budget. So.
I heard an interesting statistic last week at our college access meeting. Right now, I don't know what it is. I've got to find out what ours is in our region, or at least in Traverse City. But Oakland County, 75% of the adults in Oakland County have a college degree.
Yes.
75%.
It was the richest county in Michigan until the last.
You look at Farmington, you look at, you know, that element, it's like it's, you know, so I'm sure ours is nowhere near that. I know it's below 50%, but, you know, so, you know, the amount of people that are educated, and, you know, there's a direct correlation. I mean, you look at Massachusetts, some of the higher ranking, you know, there's a direct correlation with people that have college degrees and how well their kids do in school, you know.
But then you had Iowa for a long time
Yep.
that led literacy rates.
Right.
And most of those people.
That's because they wrote the test.
It did, that's the
But they
truth.
were able to write the test. They were able to do it, Heidi.
That's a good one.
But I am just very proud of the work that the teachers are doing, because speaking to what John's saying is, like, we do not necessarily have all the resources. Our parents, a lot of our parents aren't college educated, which we know that increases our scores sometimes. So, like, the work that our teachers are doing in the classroom day after day is having an impact.
And our free and reduced or socioeconomic, what are we?
Has increased almost 40%.
Yep.
40%.
Yep.
You know, but no excuses, gonna continue to work harder to get better in everything we do, and a lot of work being done right now across the board, and instructional coaching, explicit instruction across every elementary school, and a lot of other things we're gonna continue to look at, especially our subgroups, when we talk about those kids in that pink area, light red, that what can we do to move the needle with those kids? That's the work with the challenge that our administrators that are creating, we have data protocols that's identical across every building, really for the first time, that our instructional coaches and administrators have been, professional development on, so that's a lot of Kirsten's work as we're moving forward to do.
It's interesting. I cannot say thank you enough for this. This is very, as a board or as curriculum, I feel like we get bits and pieces.
There's so much.
And there's so much, and I know that, but this is just, I think again, when you're even comparing our elementary schools, right? And looking at kind of different scores.
One-to-one and socioeconomics. And
that's exactly right.
as we talk about priority of resources, these are things for you guys to know.
That's right.
As we talk about some of those things of the realities.
Yeah.
And as the state's continuing to change and look at different categoricals, so for instance, we may see some money for tutoring or summer programming come along. Do we target that at specific schools based on some of those needs that are identified in the data? That'll conversations that as we budget, we're going to need to have with all of you as board members. And for you to understand why we choose to do what we do, so.
Yeah, do these charts, when you look at these kind of charts, do you think about the progress, or do you think about like that summer backslide where they start in the fall?
We do.
After.
We had conversations just the other day, so when I talked about like that summer programming, and if there's something we could be done, just to throw it out there. I mean, in different places, there's been conversations about year-round school, balanced calendar, right? Yeah. And there were those here, and so you have to balance that with, obviously, people who very much enjoy their Northern Michigan summers, but are there some things that we can begin to think about creatively, especially with those kids that are that bubble kids and these kids in these buildings that we know need more supports? Are there things that we can look to do with resources? And that's gonna be some conversation we're gonna need to have.
Yeah.
And especially if some of those parents are working and they really can't find the
100%,
kids.
and could use it, so
Yeah.
Well,
those
and,
are,
and Kirsten just went before you took this role, and you were doing the summer program over at Traverse Heights, and I mean that was interesting.
first time we had resources to do it though,
Yeah.
and didn't get them this year.
But the other thing too is if you have a lot of college educated people in your community and a lot of them are retirees, that is an untapped, oftentimes, resource.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yes, and again,
I
we can
don't
look at all
think
the options for,
Use it.
again, as we try and put a program together, but again, do we have the resources? That's what we gotta figure out, and, and
coordinate
balance
it
and all that,
Run the
so.
schools, the maintenance.
So maybe, so at least we'll have a plan if we do, so.
Shoot, we're trying to get lunch buddies at Blair and Traverse
Right.
Heights and can't even
Right.
fill those,
Yeah. Right.
volunteer
Yeah.
1 hour a week, so, but
But
we're
that's our
moving in the
focus,
right direction.
and you can see the data that backs it up, so.
Yeah, well, this is great. I cannot say thank you enough, so.
Yeah, and we do
Truly.
look at spring to fall. Again, we'll look at like, what does that look like each year? But I put spring to spring, year growth, wanted to show you that.
The thing that I'm excited about the most, and I'll let the team back it up or tell me that I'm wrong, that's fine too. For the first time, I think since I've been here, I feel like every building we have those data teams and that solid and a data protocol that is, it is, as we talk about being a school district and not a district of schools, I think we have that, to have instructional coaches in every building that have been trained on the same things. Explicit instruction was something that we just had in 2 buildings, I know when I
Yep.
started. To have that going now in every single one of our elementary buildings with training on that. When we look at Hattie's work and Marzano's work of those high yield strategies, explicit instruction is one of those things. And so that's, we put a lot of work into that, and Kirsten's put a lot of work into that, and so I'm excited to see universally having that and how that work and principals can collaborate together and across schools and putting instructional rounds back into place. And getting some reflection on that and trying to get better at reviewing our practice as professionals. These are things that we have in every building, universally, with a curriculum that's universal, that's those things. So hopefully that pays dividends, and we're gonna continue to monitor and look and work hard to continue to improve.
Well, and even from our last curriculum meeting, when we talked about that instructional coaching piece, that it was not taken away or eliminated back in 2015. And so
Instructional rounds.
or instructional rounds.
Yeah.
And so, like, it would be good to hear from teachers, like, I don't know, every
Yeah.
once in a blue moon to say, this is why this really needs to stay in place, because the board's gonna change. You know, I mean, you guys might change, and just to keep that message out there of
Keep
what is
consistency.
working, right? What is working? What do they, are, and again, that peer-to-peer is just,
And it's the monitoring piece. I mean, I think people finally took a breath, probably end of last year, and are like, let's get back to the work of instruction, because there was so much of the
yeah.
duck and cover or hide, or, basically
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
Yeah.
And now it
Mental health
really has been a
supports.
breath of fresh air to see that instructional focus come back and what our metrics are gonna be to measure that. So, all good.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more from the teachers too about the curriculums that they're using. Because oftentimes, I think we change instructional methods. Parents don't know what instructional methods you're using. It's very difficult for them to reinforce any of it. I think to have more clarity on what you're looking for and how you're using it could be helpful.
Well, and even not to pull them out of their classes, but maybe even just like a recording that we could, they could share with us, kind of what's working, that would be great too.
Yeah, that, and maybe that's the next step after the assessment learning series. Maybe it's just learning about the departments and the subject area and instruction that's
Well,
happening.
and I don't want to cause any more work for, our teachers. I mean, it's not what we're here to do, but gosh, it's so good to hear
But
what's
we
working,
have-
that's good.
But
We
it's
have a
good to
bank
hear
of-
from them.
Yeah,
Well, I think as we go through our instructional rounds and some of that
Yeah.
work, we might be able to share some of
Yep.
that as it's being done and reflected in our coaches. I mean, I've even personally sat down and did a talk, a critical
Yeah.
conversation with one of our instructional coaches on reflecting on practice. And, some of that, I'm sure could be recorded, and some of that to just share with board members of what
Or
that looks
even,
like.
yeah, just say nothing and sit mouse in the corner,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we will be able to provide some of that. We have teachers that volunteered to have some recordings used for training purposes for explicit instruction. So we actually have a bank of some of those that are available. So our own teachers demonstrating specific skills or strategies that we were practicing. And I do think that one of the kind of next levels of learning for this group would be to talk about what do you do with this, right? So when you have a robust data analysis process, that's intended to lead to action, right? So we identified that there are these deficits. What do we look at and what do we do with that at every tier? So instructionally for tier 1, certainly for tier 2, and ultimately with tier 3. So that's some of the work that we're thinking about sharing so that you have that really comprehensive picture of what happens next after you get the data collected.
Yep, good.
and none of it's static.
None of it is ever
None of it is
static,
static.
no.
Especially with three, there's a conversation for us to have, I think, down the road. We have had different discussions about about how much testing we do. We've had parents come to board meetings, and that's a hard one when we have NWA. There's some that would like to move to 2 from 3. I think our middle school, we've had some conversation. I think we'll have some more conversation. I think with this committee, a little bit about, there's some things they'd like to maybe only do 2 of those and be able to concentrate as the PSAT kind of comes in. And so I committed to them that, we weren't going to shift it for this year, but we would have a conversation with the committee on some of that to inform you and get some thoughts. So know some of that is coming as well.
I know, it's so hard. I know
Yeah.
as a parent, it
It's a
was like,
balance.
what?
Yeah,
More testing?
it is.
It's
And
very,
so we are cognizant of that but, especially at the middle school, I think we're gonna have a little debate on that with you guys this year on where we're going with that.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you,
Yep.
Heidi. Okay, any other questions, or should we move on to mental health support?
Let's move on.
All right, Kristen.
I would like to first congratulate Misty Warner and welcome her to our team. You just got to meet her today as the Director of Whole Child Systems. This is our first official meeting. And I just wanted to give a shout out from the principal who, not only did we have a unanimous interview team to select her, but this was a few words from her principal. Certainly, we will miss her skills, work ethic, expertise, and unwavering commitment to show up every day ready to support some of our most difficult kids and families. What I think I will miss most, however, is who Misty is. I first met Misty when I filled in as a principal back in the day in 2017, and I remember thinking she was an impressive human. Working with her for the last 5 years has only confirmed what I suspected back then. She is courageous, compassionate, thoughtful, a leader, a fierce advocate for kids, and she is a difference maker, probably more so than anyone that I have ever worked with in any setting anywhere. She just gets stuff done. As I type all of this, it only makes sense that she is the new district director of whole child systems for our district, because who else? I think I speak for all of us when I say I'm incredibly excited for you, Misty. You will do amazing work impacting so many kids across our district. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten and Misty to talk about just some of the work that's being transitioned, and she's already hit the ground running.
And where did you come from? I'm sorry, I don't know what your background was.
I've been a school social worker at Blair Elementary for the past 10 years.
Got it.
I've
Okay.
been with the district since 2012.
Okay, I knew I couldn't remember, and I was, yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Great.
So what some of the work that Misty is going to be really focused on is related specifically to those strategic plan goals that are focused on mental health supports. And we're going to talk about that in a moment, but one of the things that I wanted to share with you is a success related to hiring. So you maybe can recall that we had at the end of last year 4 school social workers resign from the district, which was happening at the exact same time that we had invested in having more social work support. So hats off to the HR team downstairs, but they worked really in collaboration with our team to think about doing a complete overhaul to our entire mental health team. We knew that we needed to think more strategically about how we were going to recruit and retain our current staff. So I'm pleased to report that we do have 4 new behavior interventionists, 4 new school success liaisons, 3 new behavior specialists, and 1 new director of whole child systems. And that really is a reflection, I think, quite honestly, of the board's dedication to looking at mental health, certainly of Dr. Van Wagner's dedication to saying this is going to be the priority, and really getting creative about how do we go about finding folks. So our interventionists, just to draw a distinction between those, the language of a behavior interventionist and a behavior specialist, think of the behavior interventionists as our bachelor's level workers. So those are usually people with bachelor's in social work or bachelor's in psychology. Our specialists are our master's level workers. Those are people with master's in social work, master's in counseling. School success liaisons, we actually started those positions last year. That's in collaboration with NMCAA. So those are folks that are coming and serving in our buildings. So I just wanted to give you a high-level overview of the fact that we have actually had a really successful summer and early fall in hiring staff, and that our mental health team is greater than it really has been since, I was looking back, I was hired in 2001, and it is actually meeting that level of service that we used to have that long ago. So just to be aware of that.
And you also have the mental health clinic, or the student health clinic at West Middle School. That is not ours, but is on our property as well. That puts another social worker in that mix.
So just really thinking about, so when we think about the role of what Misty's going to be doing, knowing that we have so many of our strategic goal areas that are really relevant to supporting mental health, addressing bullying and harassment in an inclusive environment, strategies to deal with challenging and or disruptive behavior, that's really going to primarily be the focal point of her work, and also, quite honestly, coordinating all of these different service providers. So one of the things we really want to do is make sure that our entire team, whether you're a counselor, you're an interventionist, you're a specialist, you're a school liaison, that we are rowing in the same direction, that we have a clear idea of what that path is, and that we're providing the kind of training and support and oversight that those folks need in order to support our kids to the fullest potential. So that's really what the work of that director of whole child will be. I think Kristen said it, or perhaps it was Kirk, right, who said it so eloquently, like, we got ourselves a rock star here. We're really excited to bring her on board. I am personally thrilled because I've got a lot I can say, here you go, and I know she's gonna hit the ground running, so.
No pressure.
No pressure. Everything hinges. I know. And then the other thing, just to draw your attention to, is just like Heidi was alluding to, that we really think that kind of the next level of learning for our this particular group would really be to explore deeply, like, so we have all of this data, what do buildings do with it? How do they then in turn begin to develop the kinds of supports that we know need to be in place for kids to make gains, both academically, but also related to their mental and social well-being. So that will be information that will be coming down the road.
I'll be very interested in how you evaluate, how you choose to evaluate,
Metrics?
because that would be the interesting part.
The metrics of how we're supporting mental health, or are you talking in general
For mental health.
Yep. Yep, that's actually one of the things that we are spending some time doing, is really looking at what are the common data points that we need to say that we are kind of honing in on in order to determine impact.
And I just want to say, just having been here a while and just going through the process of like our strategic plan and looking at what our community wanted, hearing, I mean, I know my conversations with John and just talking about what does this look like, and what does the whole system look like, and just a shout out to John for continuing to push on this level of kind of redesigning the support, the whole system. I mean, to be perfectly honest, truly, thank you.
Yeah, and a great team. I'll tell you that I'd love to say some of it wasn't on a necessity.
Sometimes that's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
There just aren't a lot of social workers out there, and so we've had to look at, and there are places we've gone in other parts of the state that have done a program. And it's like, okay, can we find resources to do that as well? And so, that's been good to be able to bring some of that in and different thoughts and ideas, and say all the time that it's not always that we have to come up with the ideas. If we can steal good ones, let's steal them. And we have, and again, related directly to our strategic plan. I mean, that's the part that we're continuing, and I think our team's doing a great job of, how does this go back to that document that the board and our community said, these are the things we need to focus on 3 to 5. And so we've got, I think, some really strong components of meeting, those elements. And again, will we have arrived? No. But are we making steady progress? Absolutely.
And just sitting in those strategic planning sessions that were the teachers, the staff, the parents, just to hear this need and how that all shook out on these poster boards around the room.
And to see it being actually put in place.
Exactly, and not just what did we call it, like a shiny new object to chase, right? It actually to do good work, to actually put systems in place that are doing good work and creating impact, I mean, so it's just really great. So, and I know you have a whole team, but I just shout out for you for kind of pulling that through.
I promise you, I can't do it by myself. We've got great people in this district, our team and our buildings, and just proud to be able to work with all of them.
I know, but as a board member, I'm
understand
chirping
that,
in
but
your ear.
I
I'm not-
understand
and
that.
So,
I understand that, but
so really just.
I can drive one bus if I have to, and I'm best off not doing that. So it takes everybody. But I do want to remind the committee we've got about 3 minutes before we need to start our board meeting.
Yeah.
So-
Right. Sorry. And welcome, Misty. We're really excited for your role, and thank you so much. So, okay, sorry, moving on.
Talk through the last celebration here, which was our district curriculum and instruction restructure, which was looking at the last 10 years of how these have been structured, spending really the last year, the team spent the whole really school year over the summer working with the teachers union and trying to figure out what were the things that we could do for restructuring our teacher leaders with these goals in mind. So these are listed out here. These were the outcomes. And so we're happy to report that we have all but one elementary, I think, curriculum, content leader. So next slide, or do I have, oh, sorry. So this is what our elementary teacher leader structure looks like. We're still looking for a science content leader. And this is how it shakes out. And then,
Social studies.
and then we
Good
do?
deal. I
Oh.
mean, she had one missing there, I think, right?
Oh, you did, okay, great.
Good.
And then at the secondary level, very similar, we have all filled but one content leader. So this just allows, again, for that continuity across the district with our team where we can clarify systems, we can look at data, we can communicate effectively to all the teacher leaders, we can grow leadership capacity in our teacher leaders, and really just have a streamlined approach to looking at curriculum and instruction. So really excited about that. And you want to jump into the best team meeting?
Just some quick pictures here. We've got a group of folks, those are the, some of the best team members that are looking at, again, addressing some of those mental health goals of our strategic plan. And the next slide is just some pictures of the first day of school, some of our guests that came to welcome kids. And that last one is the mentor mentee.
Yeah, mentor mentee kicked off, so we had Tiffany join me with some special ed information on the first day, and it was packed. So we have lots of new faces, but super excited about the learning, and they're excited to be here and excited to be in TCAP. So we want to continue that momentum.
Good stuff. Really, really good stuff. Anything else? I know we're kind of crunching time here. We have another meeting, just for anyone that's listening, another meeting following at 5 here. So, okay, well, with that, our next curriculum meeting is October 30th here in this room at 4. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here.